well site located on Grange Road, McDonald, PA. Today is Monday, August 24th. Just a reminder, this meeting is going to be recorded. And we're going to do, just to get started, we're going to run this meeting tonight just so that everybody's on the same page, only until 9 p.m., just out of respect for everybody having to work and other things going on in people's lives. If we need to continue it, we will continue it. And also, we are going to do a little bit different than we did the last time. We are going to allow Grange to present their witnesses, and then we will come back and have questions from the audience. But frankly, we just ask that all your witnesses that present are available to answer questions. You're muted.
We can do that with one exception. Mr. Matt, who testified last time, answered questions, is not available this evening.
Okay, so then we're definitely going to have to continue the hearing because there were a few items that Mr. Matz was still left to answer for us, and some
Well,
additional.
there were a couple that maybe were able to answer the intro here, and maybe we can take it from there. But our understanding is Mr. Matz was included, at least as far as Connor goes, and he is actually traveling back from Colorado, having taken his son to college. So he will be available tomorrow, but he is not available tonight.
Well, there were still a few items that he had owed us, so as long as those things are answered, that's fine, but if not, we're going to continue.
Look, with that, we're ready to start. I think we can address a couple of those outstanding questions.
Sure.
We're there. Our question was, the chair asked if the Grange identify the owners of the properties who were the three closest receptor points from the Connor site. Receptor point one,
Okay.
properties owned by Frank and Rose.
Wait, Blake, can I stop you for 1 second? Can we swear everybody in before we get started? Sorry. Andy?
Just want everybody out here.
Out here first and then on.
You stand and raise your right hands. Each of you do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this cause to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but yourself.
She can.
Okay, please raise your right hands. Each of you do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this cause to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but yourself. God.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. And I'll ask Ms. Everett to confirm this with the receptor points identified in the sound impact assessment for the Connor pad for receptor one, properties owned by Frank and Rose Marie Ludwig. Receptor two, properties owned by Dane Rich Adams Key. Receptor 5, impact assessment, and that's what's been done here and will be done, as you'll see, in the future in Schultz. Those have been done now as part of the hearing, even though they're not required anytime in the near future. Those SIA sound impact assessment projections conclude that the site will the noise generated, the site will be well within the limits required under the ordinance. However, Range has voluntarily agreed to place additional sound walls strategically around portions of the pad to mitigate that sound level further, and Mr. Metz testified to that. I'd like to turn it over now though to Ms. Everett to go into a little more detail as to the protocol that Range utilizes to handle complaints.
Thanks, Glenn. And I apologize for whatever reason my camera is not working, but I hope everybody can hear me just as well. So when we are out there during any operational activity with drilling and completions, we do recognize that sound is part of those operations. Typically, it has been my experience in working with townships and with landowners. What we typically do is, if somebody has a complaint due to sound that is coming from our activity, they typically call into our response center or one of our land agents that they may already have a relationship with. Of course, they can call the township, and then there would be a protocol in place if they did call their township to complain. We don't typically wait to get a complaint from the township, but we do understand that there could be a formal process and that your ordinance does allow for a more formal process if a complaint is received from the township and then the township makes Range aware of this complaint. But typically what happens when the township is not involved in the complaint, somebody will call in, call our response center or the land agent. The policy of the response center is to provide an answer or a response within 24 hours to the individual. If somebody calls after normal business hours, they will receive a voicemail, and the voicemail is kicked over to somebody from our Surface Land Department who is on call for that evening and for the weekend. Typically, if the matter is not urgent, they'll respond the following business day. If it is something that is more urgent and involves sound, they will reach back out to the landowner and they will make arrangements with that landowner to go out and do sound monitoring at a time that is conducive to the landowner and seeking permission to be on the landowner's property. We would take preliminary noise measurements, and if they're even close to the maximum levels, we'll continue to monitor and see when we might notice any changes and why, and then we would take that back and discuss it with the landowner. We would explore additional mitigation efforts if needed, discuss it with the landowner, and hopefully come to some agreement with them. So that's just if it's handled between Range and the landowner. If the township is involved, Range is obliged to then provide records to the township and indicate how we either complied with the ordinance or mitigated and addressed the sound issue that was at hand. I don't know if you have additional questions or you'd like me to highlight anything else, Sling?
So it's fair to say that at least under the ordinance, if there's not a complaint, there's not an obligation under the ordinance to have a permanent sound monitor in place as work takes place. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Just a couple side questions, because I know there's been some allusion to the Augustine pad. I think Mr. Matz testified to most of this already, but you know, compared with Augustine, is Connor more isolated site?
Yes.
Just by example, how many homes are within 1,000 feet of the Augustine pad?
There are about 4 homes within 1,000 feet of the Augustine site.
And how many, by comparison, within 1,000 feet of the Connor site?
1.
And then, you know, the one residential development that's developed over the last few years is Windsor Woods. How close is the closest home at Windsor Woods to Augustine?
It's about 850 feet, I would say.
And then I think this was part of Exhibit 14 that Mr. Matz identified. How close is the closest home in Windsor Woods to the Connor pad?
That one is 3,505 feet from the Connor.
Almost 4 times what the distance is from Windsor Woods to Augustine, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. With those preliminaries out of the way, we have 2 principal witnesses we'd like to call. Mr. Justin Welker, who will talk about Grange's water sourcing plans, and Mr. Max Moravets, who will talk about safety and security measures at the site. Mr. Welker, can you unmute?
Yes, sir.